You have 15 messages.
Jay, it's Keith. Well, you knew that, didn't you? I guess you're sleeping. Well, I hope you're sleeping after last night, Matt.
This is the end of LCD Soundsystem.
Yes.
And it's ending in a strangely controlled manner. It's like there was a record, there was an announcement, there's a last show, everyone's aware that it's ending. When you start a band, do you imagine how it will end?
Let's do a new thing where we make our guests read their own bio while we just sit there and stare at them.
Actually, something just came up. I have to go.
Okay. Welcome to Rock Docs, a podcast about music documentaries brought to you by Treble Media. Check them out, treblezine.com. In the show notes, I will link to their Treble 100, which is a series they did of their 100 favorite albums, which is canonically the 100 best albums of all time. There can't be any more. One of them is LCD Soundsystem, Sound of Silver. It's a very good review of that album and relevant to the subject of our conversation today. I'm Dave Lizardbrand. I'm here with my co-host,
Andrew Keats. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing good. It's been a little while.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just like joining us in 300 years from now and you're speed running through Rock Docs episodes, you won't know. But if you've been following along live, it's been I don't know, a month or two. We took a little hiatus to do.
We did not throw ourselves one gigantic celebration, insisting that they would be the last episode ever before the hiatus.
Hey,
only to return not that long.
Our last episode, you may remember, was at Madison Square Garden, where we said we're never going to do this again.
Yeah.
Well, I got some news for you folks. We're back, coming to a festival or whatever. You've heard another voice there. This is our guest, Luca Morganti. Gianluca is a filmmaker from New York in exile in Los Angeles. He's made 2 feature-length documentaries and a few short films you haven't seen. Or I don't know if that's supposed to say I haven't seen. I haven't seen them because I just got this. But you, the listener, may have seen them. He's developing a bunch of shit, including 2 features, a TV show, and a docuseries. Luca, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We should talk about what thing we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about Shut Up and Play the Hits, a 2012 documentary about the retirement, which never changed, of the band LCD Soundsystem, directed by Dylan Southern and Will Lovelace. This is the second Southern and Lovelace joint we are talking about on this podcast. We previously talked about their film Meet Me in the Bathroom, and now we're going to talk about this one. So, Luca, what's your connection with LCD Soundsystem? Let's start there.
Well, I'm a huge super fan. Thank God I'm with you fish fuckers, so I'm in safe hands now.
I'm not. Don't put that on me. Wait. Hold on.
That's me.
Wind it back. Don't. Well, I'm guilty of many crimes, but not that one.
Well, I've seen them an embarrassing amount of times. I would say over 50. I grew up 2 miles away from where they're from, which for our non-American listeners is 3.2 kilometers. They were very big in, when I was in high school and college, they were very big in the indie scene, which I certainly was trying to be involved in. And now as a retired hipster, I really fit in with the fan base very well. And then
retired hipsters is their whole thing.
Yeah, I retired too. I'm too old now. But they, they really speak a lot to what it is to be an artist, which I unfortunately am. I think a lot of their lyrics talk about like the loneliness and the pursuit. You kind of see that in the doc that we'll get into. And I mean, even on top of that, they're music nerds bad. My mom is a huge music nerd. A lot of my friends are. My buddies are in a band, Strawberry Fuzz, new album out, listen. And we'll go to a jazz night and like they'll just watch the musicians play while I like rip cigarettes in the back. And I'm like, yeah, music. So like, it's like if you're into weird instruments and, synths that make noise and custom builds and things where it's like, oh, they got it from, before the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1972 and it was shipped over. Like, this is your kind of band. And that's my kind of shit.
Love it.
Well said.
And I love disco also.
Okay. Andy, other than having seen an LCD Soundsystem concert with me, which was a highlight of your LCD Soundsystem career, I'm sure. Other than that, what's your connection with the band?
Well, I should also say you're not the only one on this call that I've seen an LCD Soundsystem show with. I met Luca at an LCD Soundsystem show.
There we go.
Just a little bit ago here in San Diego. I liked LCD Soundsystem when they were in their prime. I was living out here when this concert was announced, and I made significant efforts to try to get out there for it, but I was broke at the time, and it was an expensive endeavor, and I had to just say goodbye to it and resign myself to never having seen them. And luckily, it just didn't play out that way, and I've seen them now a handful of times. But they're, I like the band like anyone who was into this type of music in 2008 liked this band.
I hear you. Probably about the same. The only time I saw him was a couple years ago at the Remix Festival. Was that what it was called?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that it's called that because it was a very cold night that night, and I was not prepared, and so I, for the rest of my life, own a Remix Festival hoodie.
Well, that's good because it comes back every year, as I understand. And no, I think it was a 1 year financial disaster, and there we go. But you did. It's a nice hoodie. Yeah, it was a good show. Yeah, that's the only time I've seen them.
$45.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, okay. So yeah, kind of the same. Music fan and nerd during the 2000s, had to get into LCD Soundsystem. Never had the opportunity or made the opportunity to see them in their pre-retirement phase, so I caught them on the flip side. Yeah, I mean, I think there's this movie has there's one thing about this movie that's the thing, right? Which is the retirement and then the subsequent events of the unretirement, right? I mean, this is like a movie where like there's everybody knows, if anybody knows this movie, they know what it is, and they like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like just a documentary about a band.
Well, it is such a funny thing about LCD Soundsystem these days is that if you tell like an agnostic person that you like LCD Soundsystem or you're going to see them, there's like a better than 50% chance that they're going to mention, it's crazy. You get to get an opportunity to see them because they retired and they never played another show again. How exactly are you going to make that work? Like it has so stuck to them. I mean, like so much more than this type of thing would stick to any other band, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm overstating. Maybe anyone who did this would have got the same treatment, but it has become like the most known thing about them.
Right. When I go see Guided by Voices, which I do often, I mean, they're not really touring now, but when they were, nobody like is like, oh, they retired in 2004. Like, I can't believe you're getting to see them. Are you traveling through time? Like, nobody's doing that bit about the 7,000 other bands that have retired and unretired.
Well, the thing is that a lot of those bands didn't then become popular and get on eBay commercials and Disney cartoon movies or whatever. Like, a lot of them did. Look at the Pixies, right? But like the LCD is like really fucking popular. Like they're on Sirius. Like my mom will send me a photo. I'm in the car. They came on. I'm like, okay, if you like, pay attention to the fucking road.
That.
Like they're everywhere now, and it's weird because they were my weird hipster band that my friends would be like, okay, like we know you like disco and dancing and parties, and this kind of all hits all that. So we understand why you like it. And then they see them live and they get converted. But like I would say, Andy, to your point, the opposite happens where people are still pissed about this. Like one of my buddies who's a musician said, and they got back together 2 years later. I said, they didn't get back together for 5 years, but people still like hold it against them or whatever. And I love David Bowie. And the reason they got back together is because James Murphy went to record an EP of Next Day with Bowie and basically said, hey, you must know me. I ripped off from you a lot. And Bowie said, you can't steal from a thief. And they started talking, and he said, it really scares me that we're the next thing, which he says in the documentary. I don't want to be the next thing. And Bowie goes, good, it should scare you. And he got the band back together. And it's like, he's entitled to change his fucking mind after 5 years. Like, I don't understand why it's still a thing.
Dude, I have to say, it offends me so little. that now, the one thing I'll say on behalf of the people who really hold a grudge about this is, the character from Losing My Edge would care about this. That they cultivated an identity of the person for whom this would be a really big deal. And the way, like right up into how earnestly Murphy talked about the decision, not just in the movie, but in the million interviews he was doing leading up to this concert, that made it so easy for people to throw hypocrisy at him and like like in America, like people hate hypocrisy so much more than they hate anything else. You know,
Well,
yeah.
Funny you should mention that. No,
Right.
look, I know,
but you know what I mean. Like it's that thing. But I mean, to me, it's so obvious. It's like, yeah, he's a 41-year-old retires, and at 46, he goes, actually, shit, I thought about it more, and what the fuck else am I going to do with my life? And there's still like thousands of people who would love to see us play concerts. Why shouldn't I do that?
Right. And also, just by the way, it says like, I want to have a life. I want to have a kid. I want to get married. He does all that. And he opens a Michelin star wine bar. That's fantastic. Yeah. Like, he did have a separate life that he said he was going to have. And then again, when David Bowie tells you to get your band back together, you listen. Like, that's just what you do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think, first of all, there's a few things that we can discuss. We're all in agreement. Okay. Like, about that. So there's number one, the character in Losing My Edge, which arguably that person would be upset about this if the person listening to Losing My Edge has like never heard of the concept of like literary irony, right? Because like the character in Losing My Edge, the protagonist is not necessarily a hero, right? Right. Okay, that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, you've got the movie, which we'll talk about, and how the movie stands up to this scrutiny. And that's a different thing. And then you've got the now of them playing, and, you know, Steve Albini, you know, famously crusty guy, was asked about this. I think it was about the Pixies, but it could have been about anybody who got back together. You know, any band that got back together. And I think the interviewer expected him to, like, roast them.
Yeah.
And he was like, who is anybody to say that you shouldn't play music with your friends?
Yeah.
Which is just like, I mean, you know, I understand there's a commercial element to this, but, like, also, like, who says? And also, like, the idea that, you know, I don't know, if you're 19 and you're getting into music, or, you know, I'm taking my 15-year-old nephew who's currently getting into like corn and stuff. So I'm working on that, people. America, I'm doing my best here. If I take him to go see LCD Soundsystem and he has a great time, like, he's probably not even going to know that about this having happened, or if he does, he's not going to care. It happened when he was like, you know, a child. And like, should he not have a good time? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's implied there? Like, should we feel bad about it? Do we have to do like a land acknowledgement thing where it's like, we're all acknowledging that we feel bad that this band broke up, and we understand that it's kind of lame, but here we're also having a good time. Like, what is that supposed to, I don't know. I can't unpack that.
I also don't understand why it matters. It's not like there's a great line if you listen to the extended of the record where, you know, he's like goes through an outro and it's like, I can do this for 1 million hours. I paid for this. So I know, like, they paid for the show. They made whatever money back, and then they went on hiatus. It's not like he suddenly secretly became a billionaire and like bought Bitcoin or whatever. Like, he's just stopped doing music outside of DJing and the occasional producing, and then got his band that he is the core creator for back together. Like, I don't understand why anyone thinks of it other than like they've only made one album since then, which is a totally different conversation.
Yeah, right. Supposedly there's another one cooking, but we'll see.
Well, then he just made a new tour. There was a great joke going around of like, they're like, management's like, James, when's the new album coming out? And he's like, Southeast tour. Atlanta, New Orleans, Austin. Like, they just like they're fucking around. They're going to Europe this summer. So it's like, why do we care about what bands do?
Right.
I don't care.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I think in some sense that's the least interesting thing about the band. So I think we got out of the way. We can continue to kick that around. I mean, that's the kind of the subject of the movie, so I don't think we can. But I don't want this just to be an hour of that. I mean, you guys talk about whatever you want. I'm not steering the ship. I'm just saying.
Well, I think
there's a lot of other things to talk about.
But I think they go hand in hand because the pressure of potential fame and serious fame, and he says this in what I find really interesting is that Chuck Klosterman also becomes this massive literary figure. Like, I would say out of the social commentators, it's what like David Sedaris, John McWhorter, and Chuck Klosterman are like the foremost American social critics. And he's kind of like not there yet when he's interviewing him. And he talks about how, you know, I like riding the subway and I like my regular life. And, you know, I completely see that here with like, I have friends who, you know, basically just do studio sessions or like only do, you know, behind the camera because they don't want their lives to change. And you're the front man of a band that, again, as he says in the film, is going to be next, and that scared the shit out of him. And like, he's entitled to that. And until you do it yourself and get to that point, like, you can't really talk because it would really be weird. I mean, I grew up taking the subway. If I couldn't take the subway without people saying hi to me, that would really fucking upset me. So I get like where I really do genuinely get where he's coming from, and other artists who have experienced that. Some people handle it better than others.
Yeah. I think maybe it would have been considered classier or something if he was just like, we're just going to take a hiatus and we'll see what happens and like not make a big deal about it. Fine. But you know, also like who cares? I don't know. Who cares?
Yeah.
All right. Can I hit you guys with a theory?
Please.
Yeah, please do.
This is something I'm cooking
I'm
up.
not going to like this. I can tell already.
No, you I think you might. This is not. So I was thinking about this. So when I was, this is called the Dylan versus Clapton theory. That's the working title. When I was a teenager in the early 90s, and I was getting into music, I got into Dylan and Clapton. I was into classic rock. And I was like really into these guys, and I was like reading everything I could about them, or like reading the like, you know, whatever. And they're both talk a lot about their influences, the music that influenced them. And so like, you know, this is like the pre-internet, you know, days, but like I would try to track down whatever I could find, you know, the music that they mentioned, if they mentioned an artist or whatever, and, you know, try to listen to that stuff. And as I did that over a period of years, I found that the more I learned and understood and listened to Dylan's influences, the more Dylan's music meant to me, right? Like the influences were, no matter how obvious in some senses, like would just enhance the experience. Whereas the opposite was true for Eric Clapton for me. I mean, I still like some of his early stuff, you know, whatever. And Cream, that's kind of a different track, but you know, it's like something about once you go back, it's like then it just seems like the watered down version of what he was doing, you know, what his influencers doing. So I guess for some people, it's fair to ask, like, where does LCD Soundsystem fall on that? Because they are, you know, talk about a band that like is so upfront about its influences. That's literally the first thing they ever did is like list all the, you know,
Yeah.
and I when I got into LCD Soundsystem, and I do this with a lot of other bands because I'm a nerd about this stuff, is like I took it as like a syllabus. You know what I mean? Like I was like, all right, whoever on this list or somebody that he mentions or somebody that is a reference in a song that I haven't heard, I'm going to try to track it down, you know, and check it out. And that introduced me to tons of great music. And, you know, to me, whenever I come back to LCD, like even if now I might pick things up and be like, oh yeah, I kind of noticed how this came from that or whatever, that doesn't take away from the experience for me. But I could see how somebody would look at them and be like, yeah, they're just a compilation of influences. So that's great if it introduces you to stuff. But then once you go check out the originals, this is going to have no more value.
Well, it depends. I mean, they're incredible musicians. Like and what I find funny is that he, you know, I'll bring people to go see him. And again, I have a lot of music friends and whatever. And like, I'll ask, what do you think about this person, that person? And like, Pat is considered to be an excellent drummer, which I personally didn't think about because I don't play the fucking drums. But they have really become, as they've played more and more in this kind of residency stage of their career.
Yeah.
They've really become tight to the point where like I saw Fish recently with Andy and I was like, oh, this is the other side of the coin. Like these are dudes who know every move and intricacy and they're kind of just jamming. With LCD, it's like very, very tight right now. Like they're at like kind of the peak of their powers playing. So, you know, you can like the original stuff, but they're a nostalgia band. And I think a lot of people like to hear, myself especially growing up listening to this music, it's nice to hear something that's like rock, disco, punk adjacent. When like name like a rock band that's big, like the Foo Fighters, they're 100. Like there aren't a lot of bands that are doing what they do, and it's interesting to see how many people are ripping them off now. Where they're like ripping off the rip-off people, so it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Yeah, there are all these new bands coming out of New York, especially that are like desperately trying to recreate 20 years ago, and it does elevate LCD Soundsystem more, even in retrospect, just to how much better, you know, the genuine article is, which is not exactly true because I think the difference is like they're just the LCD is like so much more than the sum of their influences. Like right. they actually do something different with each of those things. They do. I was thinking as you were saying this, Luca, though, it is interesting how much bigger they are now as a nostalgia act than they ever were at the peak of their creative force. Really.
Yeah, when they played Terminal 5 before the last show, I was like, wow, that's a big venue for them, you know, and now that's kind of standard. They'll play a couple of nights, but they're playing 5,000 person. They could easily sell at arenas. They just choose to do 3 or 4 days in certain places because they enjoy, you know, the smaller venues and better sound systems. But it's crazy. Like when I go and I see, the fandom is still between my age and my mother's age. Let's say I'm 36, so like you'll see that kind of range. But I'll see kids there, and it's like it's pretty interesting to see how they've moved into high school kids and all that when they again have like one album that's come out. Like you would think,
Right.
oh, this is something that's past or whatever, and people are really still reaching for it.
Isn't
And they're
that
on,
true
like,
though?
Commercials. It's weird.
Isn't that true though of a lot of artists from that era? Like Rilo Kiley just got back together and they're playing like much bigger venues than I remember them ever playing in their prime. So I think there is a factor where like some artists are just like never going to get out of the clubs or never whatever, and others like their esteem is going to grow, and all of a sudden there's a demand that wasn't there the first time.
I think there's a void in that style of music. If you think about quote unquote pop music, now it's electronic and it's rap. Those have become essentially pop music. They're not subgenres anymore. And so if you think about, well, it's funny to say this now, like four people with instruments when there's like 15 of them up there. But
right, yeah.
But like if you think about bands that have a traditional setup of what you think of from Motown till the aughts or whatever, those are dying. So I think there's a void that these bands are like, well, fuck it. Why don't we just get back together and tour? Because there's no competition.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, an interesting counterexample is like the Grateful Dead, honestly, is like, now they kept making new musics, but like when they get to their Touch of Grey era, that was a new song that propelled them to bigger crowds. But also they were like already kind of a nostalgia act at that point, you know? And they were playing way bigger venues than they had been playing 10 years before that.
Right. They were into the second generation.
Yes.
Which I'm sure if you saw like...
That's the thing. When you start
LCD,
to get two generations of people.
Yeah. If you're around that long... If you saw LCD Soundsystem in 2005 and you were 25, you might be bringing your, whatever 15-year-old kid to the show today, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's true.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Well, I think also what I love about them in terms of nostalgia is like a lot of these acts, like what we used to play when we had iPods when I was in school, we'd play a game of who hasn't Luca seen and scroll through, because my mom used to manage bands, had all these connections and would be able to get tickets, pre-StubHub, whatever. Like I saw like fucking everybody. And it was awesome. Like we spend to this day, like our Mother's Day is that we go to a concert. Like she knows more about music than all of us combined. And I like being able to hear a tinge of Donna Summer when I'll never see her, or a tinge of, the Pool for Dance Yourself Clean. Like I'll never see him. A lot of these bands have passed. And now, you can always revisit movies. You can always revisit.
Right.
A Philharmonic will always get replayed. But like, I don't want to go see like a Donna Summer cover band. Like that's not going to do it for me. So they kind of bring in a little touch of that where you kind of get this sense, and they're really fun. Like, I mean, they're one of the few bands where you'd prefer them live to recording. Like, I can't think of the last time I listened to a recording, an LP or EP that doesn't have a live counterpart to it. Like, I never listen to them unless it's live, because they're fucking fantastic live.
Yeah. Sort of like a jam band that doesn't jam.
Yeah,
basically,
a very tight jam band.
Again, I mean, they do, but they do pull in like the jam band crowd these days, which itself, like in 2008, like they did not really draw on that crowd. No.
Well, that's because the hipsters were so unappealing that everyone's like,
there was a real war back then.
Yeah,
but can you imagine if in Losing My Edge, if he like threw in the Grateful Dead, the Allman Brothers, like, you know what I mean?
Which like, right, if you're writing, and if you're writing that song now, you might.
You might, but 20, that's the thing.
20 years ago, you would never have.
Those references would not have been anywhere near the way they, Hot Tuna would not have been in the mix in in 2001 or whatever we recorded that. But yeah, interesting. Times change, I guess. All right. A comp for LCD Soundsystem. This isn't really a theory, just kind of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, like, who is this band kind of like? Is there anybody who's like them? And they're not like a lot of people, because you've got like one guy who's the main guy who's like a producer and composer, and like they're this huge live act, and and it's very synth and electronic driven, and it has a lot of influences from of like goth and punk and things like that. A comp for them who's obviously much bigger is 9 Inch Nails. Like, I bet if you took James Murphy and Trent Reznor and stuck them in a room together, like, they would geek out about synthesizers, and probably, if they got right down to it, like 95% of their influences are the same, right? They just want it, like, it's almost like a light and dark version of the same ingredients.
It's like
And
Pacino
anyone-
and De Niro at the diner in Heat.
Right.
It's like,
Yes.
we're not so different.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
and anyone who walks in that room, fun fact, kills themselves immediately. So they just lock the door behind
there
them.
you go. Yeah.
Talking Heads is another one. I mean, he's got the
Talking
shirt
Heads,
on, but there's kind of that, like, we're going to do a faux avant-garde, but it's actually rooted in very classic rock and roll and other genres. Like they had a little disco and funk going on for them as well.
Right. But David Byrne isn't the same kind of like producer, composer, synth nerd. In the same way, like the technical nerd that James Murphy and Trent Reznor. I mean, Trent Reznor's like, he's almost like a much richer version of James Murphy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. It just occurred to me.
You know what I noticed? Not to change the subject, but
no, please.
In watching the film, it made me miss New York because I love New York and it's my home. But it made me miss no fucking cell phones. You just look around, like there was one shot where they were doing something with the disco ball, and there's like 3 cameras that pop up, and you actually notice them. Whereas like I was watching something with my buddy the other day, and it's just all phones. I'm like, put your phone down. Like it's unbelievable how quickly that changed, and I can't imagine being up there seeing that. It must drive people insane.
Yes.
Yeah, and this was like 2011.
Yeah, like
2010.
You couldn't record on your Nokia. You had to
Like,
bring a camera.
It's not that long ago.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I guess iPhones were out.
I saw Nils Fromm the other day, and people recording we're like on Mars in the balcony, which is where the sound was and whatever, and people recording, zooming in, pointing over, light on in a dark room with like a neoclassical avant-garde German piano player is playing. I'm like, you guys suck. Like, what?
Just watch it.
Just watch it.
Promise you'll never watch that video.
Ever. And
you.
also, I promise you there'll be something similar you can get on YouTube that he personally recorded, because artists are finally realizing, like, we can do live, like what Fish does, basically. You could do live streams. You can have recordings that you set out a couple of weeks later. And it's like, it's amazing to see that people still do that to put on whatever their social media that no one gives a shit about.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. It occurs to me that we've, once again, we've been going at for like a half hour, and we've barely talked about the movie. Let's talk about this movie. What is this movie? For those who haven't seen it. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It definitely takes root from like The Last Waltz. I forget which band member says it. I think it's Robertson, but he's like, 20 years on the road, I can't imagine another 20. And that's kind of like the famous line from it. Yeah. And it's definitely shot in that style. I wonder how much influence he or they had on it, because they definitely picked like their favorite songs make the cut of the movie. I made a list here, but let me find it for you. Okay, yeah, they have Us vs. Them, which they love. They have Dance Yourself Clean, Shame, New York, I Love You. Like those are that, and like Movement are definitely their favorite songs, and they all make the cut. So like they definitely had a hand in that. But I wonder, did the directors just say, hey, like we're going to shoot it in this style because it's kind of a similar vein, right? Like this band is supposed to be breaking up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other so what's famous about The Last Waltz, among other things, is of course the 1 million sit-ins, and we don't exactly have that here, but we do have some, and the ones we have, much like so much of the movie, are all the more fascinating.
Oh my God.
12, 13 years later than they would have been at the time, Yeah. And right down to like Donald Glover in the crowd.
Oh, yes.
With Aziz.
Aziz Ansari.
Glover.
Yes.
Arcade Fire.
And Reggie Watts. It's like, it's just such a, like, I don't know that James Murphy sensed this when he made the decision that he made, but if he did, he is as prescient about popular culture as you would think by listening to his music, because this is so the end of this thing. Yeah, I mean, this is just completely the end of this era of hipster New York. Like, Arcade Fire like wins the Grammy for Suburbs like 6 months later or something like that.
I think before. I think they're coming off of it.
I think if Arcade Fire, if this was the last thing they ever did, and then they just disappeared off the planet, they would be remembered as like one of the all-time greats.
Neutral Milk Hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Like if their bus had like whatever.
I like when they ask him,
going across the bridge after the show. Like
exactly. They asked Neutral Milk Hotel, like, "Oh, do you want to make another album?" And he's like, you guys really like me, Like with Arcade Fire, it's just like downhill.
Yeah, it's been just horrible.
But even outside of those touchstones. It's like all the people in the crowd, like everything about it, the way James Murphy was like willing to talk about these things, like even giving Chuck Klosterman this much like time to ask, time and space to ask these questions. All of it is like, it's just over. It is, and it ended right then. You know, it really and I think I remember watching this movie right when it first came out and being like, well, the performances are incredible and the performances look great. The way they're shot are fantastic.
Yeah.
But having like no real interest in any of the interstitial stuff, because I was so used to seeing people talk about these things, you know? And now it's like, I haven't heard somebody speak that earnestly about their life as an artist in 10 years.
Well, because now everyone's a content creator. So
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
I mean, even I'll hear
Right.
people who are in the biz and be like, oh, it's good content. And I'm like, I consider it art, but I can make you some content. Like, you know, if you want me to make an OnlyFans for my feet or whatever. But the lack of differentiation of what is what we as I was like consider it and what they consider it is so different that like, why would you talk about it? Everything is fleeting. Everything is 30-second clips. Everything is, you know, send me this one funny thing or whatever. And there's really like no depth to it anymore. And that's not necessarily across the board, but that's harder to find.
Yeah.
I think also the thing that happens in this movie, the interview pieces with Klosterman, what's I guess interesting about it is that it has a certain type of significance. And you could say that it's authentic. You can maybe look at it and say like it's a little corny. It's a whatever it is. But nowadays, every artist, and this is largely a good thing, I think, is much more exposed in the sense that like there's podcasts, right? So like, you know, whoever, you know, they either have, it's either, you know, Ezra Koenig has his own podcast, internet radio show. Sorry, Jake. Or, you know, like there's a round of interviews on, you know, at length, talking to whoever. And that's great. I mean, I like that exists. And when an artist I really like is like doing a 2-hour, you know, sit down with Vish Khanna or whatever, like that's awesome. But in those, like this was before the movie occurs before that was really a thing. So like, you know, this was a big deal to like sit down and do an interview with a journalist and like talk at length. And you know, so both parties are looking at it as a weighty thing instead of like, okay, well, you're doing this, and then tomorrow you're gonna be on Mark Maron, and then the next day you'll be on this other thing, and those are all great. But you know, it was like he had these thoughts that he'd been contemplating for a long time, and this was the avenue to get them out.
Well, and so many of them are, I mean, I think part of what set the stage for Murphy and LCD Soundsystem to become a popular punchline was how, like, what an open wound he was talking about this decision in this movie and in the lead up to it, right? Talking about, you know, the artistic vulnerability and how he wanted to have a free life. And I think it, you know, eventually people just started rolling their eyes and saying, get, all right, Jesus Christ, how bad could it be? You're a rock star. And maybe people still feel that way. I do not feel that way. When I hear him talk, I find, like, I take him at his word. I think he is being honest, and I find him struggling with like why he is making this very unconventional decision to be not always coherent, but always interesting. And like that has become such an interesting part of this movie in the 10 years since that I don't know that it was 10 years ago.
And to hop off your point, that scene where he's with all the gear that he like goes to the office and says, "Oh, I haven't been here in a year. I got to go look at the fucking gear, blah, blah." And he looks at it and he just cries. Like,
yeah.
I mean, like that like really fucking gets to me. Like I think about quitting pretty much every day. I was thinking about it 2 hours ago. So
I'm thinking about quitting this podcast right now.
Yeah. I mean, if my manager is listening, Ethan, I'm really sorry I said that and I don't mean it, but I really resonate with that. And it's like, if you're, you know, like I've been on the cusp and it fails and then you kind of like get back to it. Like he says in the film, you know, I made a song at 35 and at 38, I decided to make an album. Like he had a late start. And if you're famous at 21, and he talks about this a lot now, but if you're famous when you're the Strokes age or Vampire Weekend or whoever, you just kind of get used to it and you don't give a shit and it becomes part of your life. But like being a full-fledged, fully formed or mostly fully formed adult and then having it completely change has got to be shocking. And then on top of that, like he, like you said, you take him at his word. I don't think he's done anything to be disingenuous or dishonest. If anything, it might be corny, and that's okay. But like, he makes music for everyone. But like the people who I know who resonate with him most are artists, music nerds, etc. Because it's like, not to be my own cornball, but like, you just don't fucking get it. Like, I have to like wake up and be accountable to myself every day and write and pitch myself and sell myself, and it's really hard and it's shitty. And then once you finally make it, you're like, oh wow, like that's crazy. I can't believe that. And there's a different added pressure where you're recognized, where your privacy is gone. Like you give up a lot in pursuit of it. And I don't think that's like fully appreciated for somebody like him.
Oh no, I get it. I think you can watch this movie and read it as him telling you in a way that he's not really quitting, or he's very on edge. He's very on the edge about it.
Yes.
Like he's not, to his credit or whatever, during the movie, he is not like, this is the, like he said, there's times when he talks about how he's, his questions about it, but then he goes, I know this is the right decision, but it sounds like he's telling himself that more than you, or as much as. But yeah, he's just not walking into this like, this is it, no regrets, whatever, like carve this in my tombstone. This is it, like he's not doing that. He's talking about how, he doesn't want to die. His liver can't take it, and it's kind of like, well, can't you just like maybe take a year or two off and like get a sponsor, whatever it is, like there are plenty of other artists who managed to have long touring careers after they became sober or whatever. If that's
open a wine bar to get sober.
Yeah. Okay. He's not even talking about that, and I'm not saying he's an alcoholic or just whatever. I don't know.
No, I understand.
But he like there's alternatives out there. And there's many times in the movie where you could see him wavering on this decision, and being open and vulnerable about that is great. And then it's like, to then turn around and like hammer him for going back on his, I don't know.
Well, I give a lot of credit to
whatever.
the filmmakers on that. They give him and the characters a lot of room to breathe. The film was actually shot by Reed Morano, who is now like a Sundance darling, and fucking Spike Jonze did a lot of the crowd work. There's actually a shot where they're going through the middle of the GA. There's like always a separation between two of the fire exits where like the hockey rink basically is, and you see it's fucking Spike Jonze like with the camera dude. Like he shot a lot of the crowd stuff. So they gave him a lot of room to have these vulnerable, truthful moments. Like even how they shoot the most of the Klosterman interview, the camera for one shot is all the way on what would be Murphy's left, far away. And then when they shoot him, they kind of don't focus on Chuck at all, but they're far with a zoom on, so that they can just like make them have a natural conversation. And there's so many of these moments because of how they shot the film. I give them a lot of credit for that. They're really out of their way. Like it's a very journalistic, voyeuristic kind of viewpoint that allows these moments to happen.
Well, and in the Meet Me in the Bathroom movie, we were sort of, have you seen that movie, Luca?
No, I read the book, but I didn't see the movie yet.
You can keep it that way. The book's great. The movie's not so good.
I didn't say I did.
But we were sort of dismayed when we watched that movie that they make this decision to do so much of their storytelling through sort of, found footage, but it's not found footage as much as it's just like other media. So like you spend a lot of time like learning about the Strokes through like MTV appearances, where you're just like, that is the least interesting thing about the Strokes to me.
Very unstrokes.
And very unstrokes, right? And is like, yeah. I mean, I guess somebody would say maybe it's very Strokesy, but but it's at the very least it's just like, when I found out that this movie was being made, I certainly didn't think this is the lens I was going to be watching this through. And it's sort of like they sort of do that again here. We start with Murphy on Colbert, and then we go with this, Klosterman interview, which runs throughout the entire movie and sort of becomes, I mean, he becomes like he's the second most most featured figure in the movie besides James Murphy is Chuck Klosterman. It's I don't think he's interviewing him for the movie. I think he's interviewing him for a feature, and that they just had the footage for it, and they decided. So it's similar that like they're making sort of. It's like they're making a collage, not out of decoupage, but out of like newspaper clippings. You know, like they like using other media to give themselves another
bridge,
degree
if
of
you will.
distance from it. Yeah.
Well, that's also one of the few places. I mean, talk about a simpler time. You'll see a LCD Soundsystem and Kanye West tweet cross paths. I mean, that for me, I was just like, "Holy shit, the world has changed."
Yeah.
It's so weird. Yeah.
I agree with you, Luca. I think this is a very beautiful movie. Just like,
yeah, I agree.
As great as the music is, you could watch this movie with the sound off and, you know, have a good experience as a film, which is good. I mean, that's like kind of what one of our approaches to this Rock Docs project, if I may, you know, pull behind the curtain, is like, you know, trying to treat music documentaries, which are something of a disposable art form in some cases, or product, as, you know, a music documentary as a film, as a text, and like, what is it, you know, like, does it hold up as a movie? And so that's, you know, so in this case, I think the movie first like is a success on that level, and I feel like maybe I'm a little weaker on this movie than you guys are, is the vibe I'm getting. It could be because I have such a bad reaction to Meet Me in the Bathroom, that movie, that I'm sort of now viewing this, because now this is the first time I've seen this since we saw that, through that lens of like, okay, this is you know, another piece of that filmography or something. Part of it is the sort of cringe factor of the Arcade Fire character, you know, all the other characters showing up, not James or the band, but all the other people in the movie. It's like they're all operating at one level, and then everybody else, their friends, you know, like you know, and not like their manager guy. I'm talking about like, you know, the guest stars who pop up. You know, it just seems so dated. It's like, you know, it seems now as dated as like when I was a kid in the 80s and like some 70s variety show would come on TV, and it's like, God, you know what I mean? And now you look at that and everybody looks cool. But at the time, it, you know, 10 years after that, it was like, this is the corniest thing that ever happened. Like, how did people ever think this way of being was cool? You know? And so maybe just we need more distance.
Well,
but that made it a little bit of a tough hang for me.
That's interesting to hear you say that. So I don't agree. I think that
fight me.
I think for one, the performances are so good, and
performances are great,
and look
music
so
is
beautiful.
Great. 10 out of 10 on the music.
Yeah, the music and those the you know, the way they're shot, they're so good that it has like a central element that Meet Me in the Bathroom just doesn't have, which is it's fun to watch the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, like there's like no, you know, for them to be making a movie about that era of New York and to like never be like a fun hang, is unforgivable to me. And this movie does not make that mistake at all.
It would be unfair to put that on this movie. That's fair.
I want to say to my fellow filmmakers, I did not disparage it, and I like to keep working in this town. But no, that I think what is interesting about it is that it was such a short announcement. What was it? This is happening came out around May. And then they kind of announced like, hey, fuck it, we're going to do one last tour and break up. And I don't think they had a lot of time to gather what the core was. So they leaned on Murphy. And, you know, I think the idea, Andy said it really well, and I didn't even think of this, but it is about like kind of the death of, or the end of this era. Like it really did change. Like I was in school for part of it, would come back to New York and be like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, this is so awesome. And then by the time, you know, 13, 14 rolled around, I was like, all right, well, that's dead. We're back onto like our Bank of America in New York and Wall Street and whatnot. Like the scene, you know, Meet Me in the Bathroom, the book talks about this, but 9/11 actually, of course, I'm going to fucking bring 9/11 up as a New Yorker, but 9/11 actually paused the
never heard of it.
Of the inevitable of what happened to New York, which was that the banks were really starting to take over. And then it became this kind of like, don't come, it's dangerous, it's scary place for 6, 7, 8 years, which was true. Our tourism was down. It was really grungy. Like prices were down. It was fucking weird. Like in high school, I would last $20 would last me a week. Like it was awesome. So we had this change in New York that was clearly shifting, and this was kind of the end of it. And this shit picked up again. And they do talk about that in the book and Meet Me in the Bathroom, that I thought was like a very well taken point by some of the artists. That like this scene was kind of a weird bump along the road to what New York has become today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think part of it is, as I'm thinking about it, is that maybe I need more distance for it to go from like seeming of the moment to, you know, wow, look how cool this era was. Because I wasn't there, but as a viewer,
Yeah.
I may need more time with that.
Well,
So
I
that's
also-
just me at this moment, as I'm like watching the movie yesterday or whatever. Right?
Well, I just
And-
also wonder if there's a lightning in the bottle aspect to it. There are obviously, your talk about form, like there are some things where you're covering the entire career, like The Last Waltz kind of does that. There are some things where it's just a moment in time, and this seems to just be more of the moment in time.
I do like that. I do like this, that the fact that like this movie does not bother to tell you like the LCD Soundsystem was formed in blah 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 blah, and he had a production company called DFA.
If I'm not mistaken,
the other people in DFA are not mentioned.
If I'm not mistaken, the only mention of DFA is the kid at the end of the movie who has it shaped into his head.
He goes to the office. He pops in the office and like fixes the espresso machine. Like,
that's right. That's
no. That, I mean, and that is a really that is so funny when Chuck Klosterman's like, well, what is it you want to do when okay. He's like, I have other things I want to do. He's like, what do you want to do? He's like, make coffee.
He says that to Colbert, actually. Colbert.
Colbert,
He's like, what else are you going to do? He's like, I like making coffee, which is as an Italian,
which is true.
Very excited.
Funny and also true. But I also think the fact that the movie doesn't hold your hand, I do respect that.
I respect that too, and I like. And we've talked about this with other movies. The question of like when you make the movie, how much of a history do you allow to occur before you decide that it is worth looking back at, versus making something still in the moment. And I just think that this movie is so much more interesting now, being made without any benefit of hindsight, and just when it's a raw decision that Murphy has made, and when you don't know that this period of New York is ending. This is it. This is the end. Like, this is the scene in Boogie Nights when fucking what's his name shoots himself in the face. Like, it is over.
Spoiler alert. Yeah,
it is over right now, and we don't know it, and that makes it all so much more interesting than if you waited 10 years and said,
do a retro.
And do it retro, and you say, well, we got that concert footage. We shot the show, and now we could do interviews with all these people. And there's probably some young artists who've got some really interesting ideas about what LCD meant to them. And we could talk to some older artists about what they understood about blah blah. Like, it's just like a monumentally less interesting movie than this like narrow look at one thing, and that like. Even as overwrought as it seemed at the time, like I'm like mostly defensive of Murphy's decision, both to end it and to bring it back. But of course, it did seem overwrought and like totally self-indulgent, and like everything he said about it was like super pretentious. But like, that's fine. That makes for a good movie. All of that stuff makes it like a more interesting topic.
Right. Well, to your point. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
To your point on pretension, like Klosterman flat out says that to him. Like, I heard you're pretentious, so I'm going to ask pretentious things. And he doesn't even really get defensive. He kind of leans into it. Like, I really like we've talked a lot about the vulnerability and aspects of that. I like that he's raw and being himself. And I think the way, we're going to retire in April, and these two directors call and say, hey, can we just fucking follow you around for that week or whatever? Like, it lets it be very raw and almost like jaggedy in a way, and it could rub you the wrong way, but it is true. And that's really interesting to see, because so many docs are fabricated, or you'll tip the scale, you put your finger on it, or you move something around. And this is just like, roll the motherfucking camera and see what happens. And you get those moments like him with the gear, and him with the manager, where he's like, I'm retired now, and the manager like laughs at him and goes upstate. Like, there are just these moments that make him a really well-rounded person, and people think of them as a band, and he definitely includes Pat to a large degree, and now Nancy, but like, it's him. Like, it's just him. It's like Prince. Like, the revolution's there, but it's Prince. Like, he did 2 albums by himself when he was like 19. So
there is a thing where if you're a musician, like, you don't have to be the lead singer or whatever, but like, in any genre almost, that like some people just carry themselves as though they are the protagonist in a movie, and it works, right? And he is one of those people, where like telling the story of himself is what he's doing with his life, right? And everything is autobiographical in a sense for him. Even if he's like, whatever, play with characters or irony. And he definitely has that, meaning he is an interesting person to put on screen. He's not like, he might not look like the prototypical rock, like if you were going to cast him or like Julian Casablancas as a rock star in your movie, you probably would go with Julian Casablancas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the central casting aspect of that, or whoever. But he has this like everyman appeal. He knows how he presents himself. He's aware of all these things. And, you can't fake that. Like you can't manufacture and turn somebody into being that person that can hold the stage in Madison Square Garden with whatever 20,000 people there, or fill up the screen on a movie theater or a TV screen and have that be that center of gravity, like in a basketball, like where everybody's just like has to be looking there, and and there are so many people who have that, and we watch so many movies where they have that thing, but they can't talk about it. They don't know how to articulate anything about it. They don't have anything interesting to say. And it is such a rare and wonderful thing when you get a James Murphy or a David Bowie, or like, I mean, before he went completely insane, Kanye, you know what I mean? Like somebody who is able to address that and discuss it, isn't embarrassed about it, and is going to have something articulate or interesting to say about it, even if they're also insane, or they subsequently go more completely insane. It is really, it's nice to have this documentary because of that, I think, because he is one of those people that are just going to always be interesting.
Well, and I think also, he's incredibly smart. Like there is this one scene where he said, we're pulling off this crazy thing in a boxing arena. And I thought to myself, oh yeah, like I've been going to that arena. My grandfather fought in that arena, got the shit kicked out of him in 2 rounds. And like, I was like, oh yeah, it's a boxing arena. Like the Rangers and the Knicks were not the core focus when they built it. And so even that small mention, like he is extraordinarily aware, has an incredible memory of,
right.
Of culture and what these things mean. And then I will also say
that's like a writerly detail.
Yeah. And he's on stage 2 hours into a show that he's probably drunk at. And that recalls that, like, I would say where the Knicks play or whatever, go Knicks, by the way. But he's got awareness constantly of like what certain element, what things are, what they mean. And I will also jump off that and say everyone in that band fucking loves him. Like if you Google what Nancy Wong or what Pat or what Al Doyle from Hot Chip, who's now the guitarist, say about him, they're like, he's one of the most incredible people I've ever met. He's extremely nice. He's changed my life. And like, whatever you people say about him, go fuck yourself. And like, that to me is, if you're the leader, I direct, like, I want people to want to work for me. I don't want people to be like, he's an asshole, but like, you want it to be like, he's this, and I don't really give a shit about what you think. And I find that to be really endearing. And this documentary, again, like kind of proves it. Like I highly doubt he's any different when the camera's not rolling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny to me because I think there are so many people who talk shit about this guy, and LCD Soundsystem has grown into a band that people like to take shots at. Right? Yes. Like this is a band that people now like to take shots at. It wasn't 12 years ago, but it definitely is now. And I just find him pretty likable in this movie. Yeah. Like in even like not even to intellectualize it. I just like seems like a nice guy to have a conversation with. Seems super smart. Like seems to have like his heart on his sleeve.
Not rude.
Not rude.
Yeah, even under stressful situations, like he's directing the show basically. He's talking to people, but he's being straightforward. But he's not being a jerk about it.
Well, and maybe this is because I interview people often, but like. He doesn't. He accepts every premise that Chuck Klosterman presents to him. There's a power dynamic when those two are talking. That if Murphy wanted to push back and not have a particular type of conversation, he absolutely can. But instead, he just accepts every single avenue that Klosterman wants to go down and engages with it as though he's there for leisure, as opposed to by some sort of responsibility. Not everyone does that. Not everybody who's getting interviewed by a journalist decides to do that.
And it actually works with his music too, right? Like he's very self-deprecating, and I think he means it, and he's very funny on stage. Like if you see it, he just has these weird one-off lines that like I just find fucking hysterical. And some of them are in the movie as well, but he seems to not really but he seems to understand like that he can be ridiculous and he could be a multifaceted person. And part of it is that he's kind of ridiculous and like that's okay. And he leans into that with Klosterman a lot, which I really respect because like you said, Andy, like a lot of people will push back or get, oh no, I didn't mean that. Or he's like, yeah, this is a weird thing I'm doing. And I get that I might get made fun of and I kind of care, but I also like kind of don't care. And I, want to go with my girlfriend, eventual wife.
This, Andy, and Luca, what you said, Andy, brought to mind another sometimes mocked musical genius who we've discussed on this show, who desperately wants every interview to be the best interview that has ever been given. And that would be, of course, Kenny G.
Yeah.
Luca, if you haven't seen the Kenny G documentary, I highly recommend it. It is a phenomenal work of cinema. There's no irony or joking in saying, I mean, it is an amazing film. One of the all-time greats.
Oh, well, one last thing I wanted to say that I thought of that Andy piqued my interest on is that they also the film really matches the band in that we were talking a lot about the nostalgia. Like if this is a Stop Making Sense, Last Waltz kind of hybrid child, right?
Yeah.
They shoot the concert itself like Stop Making Sense. And I mean, by the way, like I love oneers and there are like oneers galore in this goddamn thing. There's one shot where they're like, James's feet, disco ball, crowd, back to disco ball, back to James. I'm sitting there like, that's a dumb shot. I love it. But they're like, there's a bunch of, they shoot it as like those two films. And it's almost like a film that's nostalgic for those two classic documentaries, for a band that's nostalgic about an era that's gone by, about a moment that's about to go by. Like, I think they really accidentally hit a lot of marks in leaning on these things. And I thought it was a very fitting tribute to a band to basically rip a film off for a band that rips bands off.
So one thing I do want,
that's very well said.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I'm sure it wasn't accidental. But one thing I do have to say that I sort of regret in a way is because we have this like in media res, this is happening, so to speak, like movie in the moment. And that's great. I'm always curious about the other people in the band, and I feel like a lot of bands that we cover, there's going to be like 50 million documentaries about the Beatles or whoever, but a lot of bands they're only going to get one big documentary. Like they're not, they're just not. It's just not going to happen that somebody's going to go and make another big full dress documentary about LCD Soundsystem. They're just not at that level.
Someone on this podcast might. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Luca, please do. We'll have you back on to promote the hell out of your documentary and only say nice things about it. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like the likelihood is that we're not going to get another. There's not going to be the budget and the demand because there already is the canonical LCD Soundsystem documentary, and they're that kind of level of band. And like I wish there was one that maybe was a little bit more conventional, that told us about Nancy and told us about Pat and like how they all interact and let us know their personalities a little bit, because like they're clearly super talented. The dynamics of the band always been super interesting to me. And he's the talking guy, but sometimes when you get the non-talking people to talk, interesting things will come out. So,
well, Nancy,
all I'm saying is, Luke, I'm pitching you this documentary.
Yeah, please. Nancy has horrible stage fright, so he puts her up front and center, like to kind of almost get her over it, so she can't hide. And Pat, I met Pat. Where did we go after the show in San Diego? Is it Tripoli or?
Yeah,
they popped in at Alan.
Oh,
Pat,
really?
And I was just like, "Hey, like you're a great show, big fan." And he was like, "Oh, thanks." And, like ran away to go to the bathroom. Like they seem to be really fucking shy, all of them. And it's funny that they work with this like pedantic, verbose dude who can just handle all the talking. They're like, you fucking do that. Like, I don't want to say a goddamn word.
That's
right. But, I think, Luca, you're a skilled filmmaker. You could warm them up, maybe get Andy in on it, use those journalistic skills to.
Well, not that James will ever listen to this, but there's a running thing in my friend group that if anyone could get a picture with him, I will frame it and put it in my house. Cause a lot of my friends live in his neighborhood. So they'll see him and like kind of chase him down. Like, dude, do not fucking chase him down. Like I would be furious.
I mean, he's tall, so it's probably hard for him to hide. He's a distinctive look, and he's a big dude,
and he's got a 4-year-old with him. So it's like this like famous 6'4" hipster with a 4-year-old. My buddy's like, I'm gonna go ask him for a picture. He's right there. I said, John, if you do that, we're not.
I mean, doesn't every hipster in that neighborhood toting a 4-year-old around though? I mean,
ironically named Luca now, which is
yeah, that's right.
Love it.
Okay, well, so the Klosterman of it all, we've bounced around this, but I mean, he's just in the movie so much. It's fascinating, and the central part of it to me is when he says he offers this theory that bands are remembered by their collective successes, but defined by their singular failure.
Yeah.
And so on one point, that's like just classic Chuck Klosterman. Like it's such like
He's so great.
it's such like a, on one hand, like you hear it and you're like, okay, I think that makes sense. And then the more you think about it, you're like, is that just a horoscope? Is that like so?
It's a fine line between clever and stupid.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's
Isn't it
exactly
always?
where it's like, okay, like I guess I could probably make any band I know enough about fit into that rubric.
Right.
But it's mostly because I know enough about the band and it's like specifically vague, you know, in the same way that a horoscope is. And so every one of them is true about everyone.
Right.
But in any case, he says that. And then like, he says that before LCD Soundsystem comes back, and you know, it takes on, in the context of this band, it takes on such significance that they are like their singular failure, the thing that they are most defined by now, as we've said a million times, is their decision to stop and come back 5 years later.
He says it's the decision to stop,
and he says
that's
it's
only
the decision,
half of it.
It's the decision to stop, and it's only half of it. And like, and then even when he says it's the decision to stop, Klosterman jumps on it and goes, "Well, you're so in your head about it. It's like it's not. You're not even saying it's a decision to stop. You're saying it's a decision to stop, and your own internal battle and your own internal monologue about what it means that you've decided to stop, and what people are going to say about the fact that you've decided to stop, and whether you should and shouldn't, and like the." If they kept talking for 4 years, they would get to the point that he comes out of retirement, and the conversation would just carry through perfectly.
And
it's
his espresso machine broke, so he finally needs something to do.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess if somebody says like, "What's your biggest failure?" What failure will you be remembered by? The secret answer is like, it might not have happened yet.
Yeah,
right. You know,
coming back would be now, right? But I find to your point of what we talked about earlier, but the number of people that I've talked about this band with, and even in saying, oh, you know, I'm going to do this Rock Docs podcast with my buddy, and it's, you know, I'm going to do the LCD doc. I would say 50% is a good number of like, you know, they broke up for 2 days, 5 years. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, like I don't know him. I can't call him and say everyone's upset. Like what? Like what am I going to do about it? I like the music. Leave me alone.
Yeah. That's right.
Do you think people give him shit in person? Do you think he gets that? Like walking down the street, like, "Hey, are you going to break up your band again?" Like,
I
or do you
think he's
think
probably too scary. I mean, do you really want to fuck with a guy who reads Thomas Pynchon for fun? Like, he's gonna ruin you intellectually.
I mean, no, I'm talking about like New Yorkers talking shit. I mean, come on, creature creatures. You know,
we really fucking love this band. Like, they're like our. You know, I'm like even with the Strokes, like they're Upper East Side kids. Like I was involved. I like that. I went to a million shows, but LCD is like the borough peoples, and like you don't fuck with us. Like we'll ruin you.
Okay.
I mean,
Fair
also
enough.
you're gonna tell like the King hipster, he'll be like, "Nice denim jacket. When was that cool?" or whatever, and you're just like, "Fuck! Like I gotta go change my whole look."
That's right.
He could probably dress you down pretty good if he had the moment. All right, where are we at on this movie? I think maybe you've talked me around it a little bit. I think maybe I was coming into this a little hot on like, you know, I don't know.
An hour and a half,
the music is great, but does this hold up? You know, is this corny? And now I'm starting to think like, it's not corny. I'm corny.
Well, I don't think it's. I mean, even if it is or isn't, it's just again like vulnerability kind of can be corny, right? Like it has.
Yeah. I'm not objecting to vulnerability.
Have you ever said anything to a partner where you're like, "Ooh, shit, I shouldn't have."
No. Let me go get my wife right now.
Yeah,
should have kept that to myself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like we're married, and I said that. Like,
I mean, that's like why breakups are bad. You're like, she knows about all that stuff I said. Like, unbelievable.
That time I wore sky blue shoes or whatever. Like, there's just so many fucking things that you have, like vulnerability.
Okay. I hear you. I'm not knocking the vulnerability of it. I'm talking about like the era of it. Just didn't like. It was weird for me at the moment.
I'm surprised to hear you say that, because it to me is like it's like the right amount of time that I'm like, man, it's nice to go back.
He's upset
It's
that
nice
we
to
never
see.
invited him to the hipster parties. That's really what it is.
I mean, that's obviously true. Because I mean, if there was a hipster party happening, Andy was definitely there. Luca, you might not have been there. Andy, I'm not sure was in.
Yeah.
I was probably there.
He was saying string cheese incident that night.
No, but I mean, like again, like with some of the filmmaking and this nostalgia thing were great, but even in terms of like whether it does or doesn't hold up, I think it's interesting to see that a lot of what he talked about and was afraid of came true. They became much bigger. They became a much bigger act. Like I saw them on an eBay commercial with Daft Punk's playing in my house. I'm like, what does this have to do with opening an eBay box? Like what it is some 48-year-old creative director said, I got a budget, I'm getting that fucking song. Like,
there you go.
So they've moved into this part of the culture where they're like, like almost tertiary to it, but they're still really big, and it's probably perfect for him. But he was afraid of being Arcade Fire.
Well, I mean, the character in Losing My Edge would not celebrate being in an eBay commercial, right?
No,
I mean, but that's also the layers of irony that are happening. Like he gives himself permission to do a lot of stuff.
I mean, he's got a kid now. He's like,
I can change. He literally said so.
Yeah, he's like, it'd be really cool if my son can afford to go to Harvard when it's $1.4 million a year or whatever. So,
Andy.
Yeah.
Honestly, you're sitting there. Let's just say you're at James Murphy's wine bar. It's after closing. James comes over.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are hanging out. You've had a few.
Yeah.
Okay, you have this moment, right? You're connecting.
Yeah.
And you ask him a question. Yeah. And the question that you ask him, and I want to know what you think his honest answer would be. If it like, there's no cameras, there's no Chuck Klosterman.
Yeah.
There's no. What do you think about fish? What do you think he would say?
So first of all, that's much closer. I thought you were going to ask if I would ask him anything about the decision to stop playing.
No.
Which I absolutely would not.
No, that'd be lame. You wouldn't do it. No.
I might ask him about fish. You're absolutely right that I very well may ask.
What do you think he would say about fish in an unguarded moment, not for publicity?
In an unguarded moment, I think today.
Yeah, it's like 2025.
I think the version of James Murphy who is now playing to like the biggest crowds he's played to would be like, man, those guys are like fearless performers. It's amazing what they do. It's amazing how long they've been doing it. Just the four of them to like have, I went to a show once. I went to a show once and like those guys have the crowd like putty in their hands. The way they like manipulate reactions with the set list decisions is like a performer's performer. I think that's what he would say. Maybe with like the sound isn't really for me thrown in there. I
think that's exactly what he would say.
Yeah, I think 10 years ago, you would just be like, get the fuck out of here. Like, fucking are you kidding me?
Security.
I think that's the interesting thing with the character and, the way the band was and the Losing My Edge character that we've talked about. But I think the game respects game thing has always been his motto. Like, that's why he brings up the Kanye tweet, right? It's like an undeniable force at that point in time. And I think Yeezus had come out and that was very avant-garde. And like Lou Reed fucking loved that album. Like, I think he's always been someone who respects something, even if it's not for him. And that I think is also why he's such a talented, conglomerate almost, if you will, of information, because he knows what's good and what's not. He has excellent taste, and maybe it's not for him, but he's not going to say it's bad. Like Katy Perry's bad, but like, or whatever those people are. But not for me is different.
I mean, I don't necessarily get the sense that he is that engaged nowadays with younger artists, right? Like, I mean, if he ever works with anybody now, it's like somebody that's his contemporary or older, right?
Well, I mean, the record label does, like, Holy Ghost was on there, and now they broke up in the Dare.
Okay, that was already a while ago.
Well, I mean, like the Dare.
I guess the Dare, yeah.
But he still DJs a lot, so I don't know. Like, do we go to? I haven't been a DJ set in a while, and if I do, it's usually with people under 30. Like, I think that he still enjoys doing what he's always been doing. And like he tried, I mean, You Wanted a Hit is basically a Britney Spears diss track. Like they tried to have him work with Britney and she'd come in and smoke fucking Newports and he'd be like, I can't do this. And
apparently that's 25 years ago or whatever.
That's true. I mean, I guess, but who contemporarily is even in the same boat that would want him? Like he's not going to work with like Future or like fucking like rap artists. He's not going to work with electronic artists. Like the electronic artists today are completely different than
No, I hear what
than
you're saying.
his lane.
Yeah.
It's not a criticism. I'm just curious.
No, I just
does
don't
he
think
get-
this
I
is-
bet you he's pretty dialed in still. I bet you he's.
Yeah,
or is he
like,
mostly listening to Fish?
does
Is
he
that
go to Fortet concerts and shit? That would be fucking hilarious. I would love.
I
to see
mean,
that.
yeah, I don't know. There's bands that Andy and
I
I,
bet
go
it-
see, and we like new bands. And
I
then
bet he's into.
Yeah.
I bet he's into MJ Lenderman.
that's where I was going. That's what I wanted to land this plane. is-
Yeah.
What is your opinion of Goose, Fish, and Jay Lenderman? Let's just run it down.
James, I'm glad you came over. I've got a short list I'd like to run.
He's like, I only have one bottle of wine. I'll be right back.
Not Geese. No. Geese is good too. No, but first we're getting to Goose.
Actually, I bet he loves Geese. Honestly, I bet he likes Geese out
There you
more
go.
than
That's
all of these
There
bands.
you go.
That
That's
we
a band
mentioned.
that, yeah,
That
who
he would
that's
be
who might
really-
be into. All right, we've
Jumped the shark.
we've kicked poor James Murphy around enough. Anyway, Luca, thank you so much for joining us. This is definitely one of those docs that's been on the list as one we got to get to, and we've now gotten to it. So
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll be back anytime you want to have me.
Yeah,
man.
let's let us know when we've got something to help you promote.
That'd
Do
be
that.
great.
yeah,
Cool.
like your LCD Soundsystem full-length documentary.
Do you think my
Coming-
manager is
coming
up?
to a
I can
theater-
call him right now. Yeah, he's probably up. I'll give him a shout.
All right. Thanks a lot. And thank you for listening to Rock Docs.
What is your life like now?
I don't know. It doesn't really start till April 3rd.